Happy Halloween!
I'm a fox, and I have to move far away so you can see my tail. But I'm a fox.
And a dork. But I'm always dressed as a dork, so that wouldn't be a very good Halloween costume. I have a story to tell you for Halloween, submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I give you the tale of the Scaredy cat. I just got dust all over my... Do not think that through. How did they do that? Okay. Anyway, if you know me, you know that I love Disney's Haunted Mansion attraction in Disney World. If I could live there, I would live there. Like if I'm ever asked, where do you want to live? That's my answer. Not even another country, not even a fancy Paris or London or Guam. No, the Haunted Mansion. But I haven't always been that way. When I was a child, like 5, I went to Disney for the first time, and I rode the Haunted Mansion for the first time. And like before I rode it, I had been told all this stuff. Oh, you'll love this. It's great. It's funny. It's exciting. It's a little scary, but you'll like it. I screamed the entire time. I rode it the first time I rode it with my sister, and she was laughing at me because I was afraid of everything, which didn't help. So a little 5-year-old or 6-year-old me, I was either 5 or 6. I was screaming the whole time. I hated it. I was scared. I was uncomfortable. I didn't know what was going on. All these things were popping up and yelling at me, and I don't like being yelled at. I never have. So I was just like, oh my god, this ride is horrible. I want to get off. I don't like it. But I didn't, and I rode through, and I cried, and I cried, and I freaked out. And my sister kept being nice and like pointing at things and saying, look Sarah, this is funny, like the hitchhiking ghosts. I was not having any of it. I was scared. And at one point the ride stopped, and one of those hopping ghosts was in front of us and kept hopping up. And that was horrible. Like for a minute we were stuck on the ride with this thing popping up in our faces. So it wasn't fun, and I didn't like it. But my parents were like, no, you'll like it, it'll be fine. So I rode it with them again, in between them, because the Doom Buggy can hold 3 people, especially if one of them is small. So we got in the Doom Buggy and I rode with my parents, and it wasn't as bad. It was funnier, things were a little less scary, I guess just because I was with my parents. And also because I had ridden it once, so I'd seen everything that was going to happen. And it didn't stop that time either, so I think I should just blame my sister. But anyway, I was so scared. Like, I was still so traumatized by the first time I rode it that when we went home after our trip to Disney World, I was still so freaked out by that ride that my parents had this cake topper from their wedding when they got married. It's like the 2 of them on a stand with like lace on the bottom that they had on the top of their wedding cake. And you're supposed to save that, I think, as like a memento of your wedding. They had it on their dresser, and their bedroom was on the way to my room. It was a long hallway in Alabama. So to get to my room, I had to pass this cake topper that was on their dresser, like right by the door of their bedroom. And I was afraid of the cake topper because it reminded me there's this little ghost at the end of the Haunted Mansion ride that tells you to hurry back and be sure to bring your death certificate. And so that reminded me, like the cake topper reminded me of that little girl, little woman. So I was afraid of the cake topper, and I didn't want to pass it. Like, I would walk really quickly, like, to my room, and, like, pass the door and be afraid to look, and I hate my life, all this stuff when I was 6. But yeah, so I was traumatized by the Haunted Mansion, and it's only recently, like high school, that I actually have been so in love with the Haunted Mansion. It's kind of one of those things where when you're really little, you can't really appreciate scary ghosts. Unless you're like the type of person who has no feeling. The year before, I went to Six Flags over Georgia, must have been. They had this ride. I don't know if they still have it. It actually inspired an episode of All Real Monsters. It was called The Monster Plantation. You can tell it's southern. It was a whole bunch of monsters, and there was like this part where it was glow in the dark, and it was all these glow in the dark monsters, and it was just like really cheesy animatronics, and they were singing this song, join the monsters at the mansion, and like on a loop. It was really annoying. But when I was 5, it was terrifying, and you had to go through this, like, monster's mouth to get out at the end, and I didn't want to go through the monster's mouth, and it was horrible. And there was this monster at one point that said, I remember, he said, don't go in the marsh, and then that was when you got to the swampy part with the glow-in-the-dark monsters, and they were, like, on seesaws, and they weren't really even doing anything scary. It was just a bunch of monsters having fun, but it was scary if you were little. But I remember thinking he said, don't go in the living room, and I don't know why. I came out of that ride thinking, don't go in the living room. And it started making me think, oh my god, if I go in the living room, there's going to be a monster. So I should never go in the living room because there's a monster. But I am a perfectly normal person, so these things clearly did not have any effect on me. Join the monster.